without further ado, let's start today's session. I would like to invite Ms. Rebecca Robertson to give the opening remarks. Rebecca Robertson is an advisor for climate change and environment within the New Zealand Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Trade. Her primary role is supporting delivery of climate change activities and funded by the New Zealand's aid program and climate finance commitments. Over to you, Ms. Robertson.
Thank you. Kia ora koutou, ko Rebecca tōku ingoa, te tamaki makaurau Aotearoa ahau e noho ana. He kai tohu taku turanga mahi, he manatu aorere e mahi ana, nō reira tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa. Hello everyone, thank you Juicy for that introduction. Yep, my name is Rebecca and I'm an advisor for climate change and environment with New Zealand's Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Trade based up in Auckland. Thank you for the opportunity to open this session today. I really look forward to hearing from all of you and your reflections on the development and implementation of low emission development strategies and NDC actions to date. As we all know, NDCs and low emission development strategies are at the heart of the 2015 Paris Agreement and are central to achieving its goals of pursuing a 1.5 degree world. Both are critical tools for Pacific Island countries to build resilience to climate change while simultaneously reducing dependence on high emission activities and resources. Low emission development strategies help to advance national climate change and development priorities through a more coordinated, coherent and strategic manner. The strategies not only provide a framework for decarbonising economies over the next 30 years, but they also create a structure for establishing targets and milestones in countries' NDCs. The strategies can also be effective mechanisms for supporting access to climate finance through identifying priorities for green, low-carbon projects for investment over the near and long term. Despite facing challenges such as high dependence on fossil fuels, soaring energy costs and increased vulnerability to natural disasters, the Pacific continues to show a firm commitment to low emission development by setting ambitious targets within their NDCs. The Pacific NDC Hub has been instrumental in supporting many Pacific Island countries in formulating policies and plans that contribute to achieving these targets and working to reduce reliance on high emission resources and activities. We are proud to support the initiatives working to develop low emission development strategies and to achieve these targets within NDCs. We continue to see the value of the work being implemented in these areas, and we are proud to have supported work to date, such as the Pacific NDC Hub, partnering with GGGI in the development of LEDS, for example, the development of Tonga's low emission development strategy in 2021, and also through the Low Emission Climate Resilience Planning Program. The development of low emission development strategies and activities to meet NDCs continues to allow Pacific Island countries to work towards achieving their long-term goals, and we recognise GGGI to be an integral partner in this. I look forward to hearing the outcomes of today's session, and I want to thank you again for the opportunity to open this session today. Ngā mihi, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa. Thanks, Jessie, back to you.
Thank you so much, Rebecca, for the opening remarks. Our next speaker is Dr. Stelios Kraukos. Dr. Stelios is the Deputy Director at the Climate Action and Inclusive Development Unit of the Global Green Growth Institute and head of the GGGI Hungary office. In his role, Stelios is also responsible for GGGI's work on the macroeconomic analysis of low carbon and climate resilient plans and strategies. In particular, he is leading GGGI's technical work on supporting member and partner countries to develop their long-term, low-emission and climate resilient development strategies, LEDS. He will be presenting on the scene setting and lessons from Burkina Faso and Ethiopia. Over to you, Dr. Stelios.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for the kind introduction. It's great to be with you at this very interesting session. I'm going to provide you, if you can go to the next slide, I'm going to provide you a bit of the global background and set the scene for the more detailed discussions around LEDs and NDCs in the Pacific states. Just to highlight that the first time that the LEDs was highlighted was the landmark agreement, the Paris Agreement, under the Article 4, where the countries are encouraged to develop their and communicate their long-term low emission development strategies based on their capabilities and responsibilities. The long-term low emission development strategies, the first synthesis report, that was a kind of global stocktake on LEDs, reviewing the number of countries that have submitted LEDs to the UNFCCC. That was published and shared in Egypt in the CAP 27. And clearly there, the message was that countries still, there are many countries that they haven't developed their LEDs, so they're expected to continue submitting their LEDs or updating their LEDs. And for this purpose, in 2023, the NDC partnership published the call under the LEDs in order to provide matching between countries' requests and partners to develop their long-term strategies. And very recently, we have the global stocktake, which also many times refers to the long-term low emission development strategies, and identifies that still countries need to advance the development of their long-term strategies and to make sure that those that they haven't developed to address, and the NDCs to be fully aligned with the LEDs. In essence, the LEDs will steer the NDCs to more ambitious efforts. If we go to the next slide, you can see at the next slide just an outcome of the synthesis report. This is based on the 56 LEDs that were submitting the review. And what you can see here is a comparison on the level of per capita emissions of countries that they have submitted LEDs to the UNFCCC. You can see after 2020-30 a steep line that reaches around 2050, reaching the 2 degrees Celsius target. So there is a clear message that the NDCs are not reaching the 2 degrees targets, but if the countries set long-term targets aiming to reach net zero emissions by mid-century, we may be able to reach these targets. And you see here also in comparison to the other IPCC scenarios that have been developed. So this is a hopeful message, but still a lot to be done, as you can see. This is just the countries that they have submitted LEDs. So it's a clear message for all other countries. But let's go to the next slide. This refers more to the main emitters, right? This is certainly for the G20 countries that they contribute to 80% to the global emissions. But what about to developing countries, SEEDs, LDCs? Why LEDs is important, somebody will ask. I think it's very important. LEDs is not only about low emissions, it's about development. And therefore, sustainable development should be at the core of the LEDs. LEDs as a strategy is a tool to bridge national sustainable development, climate mitigation, but also climate adaptation objectives. Is a climate strategy, a long-term strategy. So climate resilience LEDs is an opportunity really to raise the climate resilience of the country. So this is very relevant for SEEDs and of course the Pacific small island states. It's a policy structure for countries to transform their economies in a green, climate resilient way and align different national policies in a long term for climate proofing the economies. It should be aligned with national determined contributions, and as I mentioned before, could drive and could lead ambitious and impactful NDCs for the next NDC revision cycles. Very important, resource mobilization. This is a key vehicle for governance to attract finance, private finance, and international climate finance. Carbon trading will be also something that already countries can start exploring. And of course, to develop a long-term plan for project pipeline. And lastly, also it's a great opportunity and process for countries to enhance their capacity with regard to accessing finance, with regard to planning, but also to demonstrate, as many Pacific countries are doing, global climate leadership and pressure high emitters to do also their homework and what is needed. The next slide. If we can go to the next slide here, it's you see the map of the countries that GGGI has supported. And yeah, you see 4 small island development states in the Pacific. We are very proud of, with the support of our donors, having supported these countries. And if you go to the next slide, so this really shows the range of support we provide. When it comes to long-term strategies, there is no one size fits all. Every country is different with regard to the economy, with regard to vulnerability, with regard to emissions, so on and so forth. So here, the idea is not to go through the details of the table. You can see that different elements and components have been integrated, incorporated in different ways or addressed in different LEDS. So this is a demand-driven process, a country-owned process should be, and different countries address different elements in a different way. If we go to the next one, however, despite the fact that there is no one size fits all, we can get some lessons learned based on the experience we have so far in these 8 countries. As mentioned again, this is a process that should be country-owned and demand-driven. GGGI is there to support, has a supporting role, should ensure a participatory inclusive process, not just to tick the box, but indeed to make this more implementable, more acceptable, and more impactful. And of course, address the demands and the needs of the most vulnerable, of course, women and youth. It should be a holistic and integrated approach in line with national development priorities, and not only focusing on emissions, this is just one part, but also on socioeconomic benefits of this transition, just transition. What are the implications to the labor force? It is in line with development priorities and other socioeconomic benefits. As mentioned before, finance planning is very important to move from planning to implementation and start catalyzing climate action implementation. And lastly, this is an opportunity we need to ensure when we design an LEDS process to make sure that we enhance institutions and we build capacity on the ground. This is a great opportunity through the process by learning by doing, by on-the-job training, so on and so forth. And I will, to the next slide, please. And I will conclude quickly with the GGGI's approach to LEDS. In essence, we try, based on the lessons learned, to address those issues, to make sure it's a country-owned process. We provide sound analysis through the whole process, quantitative and qualitative. We follow an integrated approach, both adaptation, mitigation, SDGs align with different policies. Strategic partnerships is very important with different partners, and of course, international and national experts. And lastly, also always we aim to disseminate knowledge generation and enhance capacity building. Next slide. These are the LEDS you can find on the UNFCCC website that countries have supported, and we have also the GGGI on services on supporting LEDS. And I hope soon we can have a knowledge product based on the experience of the Pacific small island states. And with that, I would like to thank you very much and welcome you and invite you in the global LEDS session tomorrow. Again, you can see the details here. Hopefully I can see you there as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Dr. Stelos, for that excellent presentation on scene setting and lessons from and lessons learned. I understand. I mean, our next presenter should have been Mr. Henry Tuffa, but I understand he's having issues with connections. So we'll now move to our next speaker, Mrs. Eslin Karaibidi. Mrs. Eslin Karaibidi is the Director General for the Ministry of Climate Change Adaptation, Meteorology, Geohazards, Energy, Environment, and Disaster Management from the government of Vanuatu. She was the former director of the Vanuatu Meteorology and Geohazards Department. She has a master's degree in seismology and multiple hazard systems. She will be speaking to us on lessons learned during the design, adoption, and early stages of the implementation of Vanuatu's LEDS, including an adaptation component. So thank you so much, and over to you, Ms. Karaibidi.
Yes, it is with the privilege that I'm here to present what we experience and the lessons we learned in Vanuatu with our own development of low emission strategy. As we all know that this strategy is a requirement under Paris Agreement, so it is an obligation for Vanuatu to develop such a strategy that credible back to net zero greenhouse gas emission by 2050. Vanuatu context is different because we have we are already in net zero. Our forest, we have a wide forest, and our emissions is negligible in front of what we emit. But it is our obligation to develop this strategy to point different actions that we need to know and we need to address in the market. Okay. Next slide. So the purpose of the strategy that we have is to develop our own pathway of reducing emissions, but also, as I said, it will demonstrate a commitment and yeah, and we also
DG Eslin, are you able to see my screen?
Okay, sorry. Yes, so the one affiliates the scope and figures. We have so the vision driven action prioritization is to reduce the emission across all sectors in a way that supports resilient, sustainable, and equitable growth for its people. We have quantitative energy and emission modeling in energy, transport, forestry, and land use, livestock, and waste. This program was funded by New Zealand, and the other part on integrated adaptation to the incorporation of climate variability mitigation and adaptation concept. The financing for adaptation is funded by IHS Forces the Development. So these have helped us to collect data, lessons that we learn along the way as we develop this policy strategy. The strategy has been launched at the COP27 event last year in Shanghai. There's a lot of publications that were created on videos. In country, we have endorsement at the high level from the Council of Ministers on this strategy. So we as a vision, the main vision is to reduce emission across all sectors in a way that supports resilient, sustainable, and equitable growth. For that one, there are a lot of workshops, consultations with stakeholders that have shown a vision for the lowest emission pathway. Different sectors that have involved in this exercise were especially the livestock sector, waste, agriculture, transport, and energy. They are the main identified sectors that were involved their activities of involvement with emission buckets. There's also mitigation and adaptation actions that are also identified in those sectors. So as the emission partner, for each of these sectors, in terms of strategy, policy that action aligned to low emissions, mostly the electricity and energy, as well as waste and forestry. They are the sectors that have clear strategy and actions in place. But current emission situation shows that these sectors' activities are stable at their emission levels. The other sectors, water, health, livestock, and transport, at the time of this consultation, we identified that these sectors have no strategy or any actions in place to address emissions. So in terms of addressing the resilience and adaptation, the main sector that is very well established with strategies and actions is thus sector of forestry, agriculture, and land use. They have clear policy, clear strategies in place to address the resilience and adaptation. Other sectors have yet to develop or have yet to fine-tune the strategies and action. Otherwise, in the current competitive capacity, most of the sectors have stable adaptive capacity. Next slide. So the journey was long. It began in 2020 when the travel into Vanuatu was heavily restricted due to COVID. Even though there was restricted travel, it's restricted communication, but that was the time when the concept and the funding proposal has been developed. The project was set up in 2021, and consultations have started until October 2021, when there's a course assessment in undertaken among the different sectors. In March 2022, we were hit by COVID, and there was
TJ?
border lockdown. Yes.
Sorry, TJ Aislinn, I'd like to ask if we can just speed up a little bit because we are a bit behind time. So,
Okay, so
thank you.
okay, so as I said, this strategy has been launched in 2027. The most important situation is the lessons that we learned along the way in this development. When we know that even though the border was locked down and there's a limited movement, but we see our national sectors motivated, and especially the people staff in country were very supportive to the different sectors to collect the information that we require. Very supportive, very open to communication. So the government of Vanuatu also try to demonstrate ownership along the way. There's a very strong engagement between Triple GI team here and the regional staff with the national government. That his strong engagement was the key to have good progress in this development. So despite the lockdown, despite the challenges, we managed to launch the policy this year, end of last year. So once again, we just like to thank the funding agencies, especially the New Zealand Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Trade, as well as the sponsors in development, technical assistance to Triple GI and the Vanuatu government to develop this very important.
Yep. Thank you so much, TG Aislinn, for that great presentation. I think we are a bit lagging behind time, so I kindly ask the speakers to keep up to the timings allocated. But thank you so much, TG, for that great presentation and experience on the Vanuatu LEDS. We will go back to Mr. Henry Tuva, who's the Deputy Director for the Climate Change Division from the Ministry of Climate Change in Solomon Islands. He will be presenting experience on the designing, adoption, adopting the Solomon Islands LEDs and expectations for its implementation. Thank you, Henry.
Thank you very much, Benjamin, for the opportunity. Can I get a top if you hear me clearly?
Yes, please go ahead.
All right, thank you very much. So, like Vanuatu, Solomon Islands is also developing its LEDs. It is a long-term strategy that includes all the development aspirations of the Solomon Islands as a party to the UNFCCC. Next slide, please. And now LEDs, Shanil, I think you went a little bit too far. The slide. Yes, keep it there. Yeah. So the Solomon Islands LEDs has a 2050 vision to guide the Solomon Islands development, and the visions for the LEDs is to maintain the net zero emission across all sectors by 2050 with equitable and economic growth and resilience. In terms of the LEDs document, there are two important points that I want to highlight here. So nationally, LEDs is aimed at supporting the strategies and short-term development strategy of the country, but as well as internationally to give out the message that we cannot sit here and suffer from climate change. We need to start planning and develop strategy to move forward. Next slide, please. Thank you. And in our LEDs document, there are 22 checks from the 6 major emitting sectors, but also from the 4 enabling institutions towards low emission pathways. So the 6 major emitting sectors are energy and electricity generation, transport, agriculture, forestry and land use, waste, and livestock. These are the major emitting sectors, and 4 enabling institutions are all making up 22 steps. Thank you. Next slide. All right, and the LEDs came up with 4 important recommendations to guide Solomon Islands, low emitting pathway to achieving not achieving, but maintaining its net zero status by 2050. And these are policy and administration as 1, 2 is carbon markets, 3 is data management, and 4 is financing vehicles. Next slide. Rather than next step, we want to advance and move forward with our LEDs, and especially implementing and start putting into action what the LEDs has come up with. So there are 4 important ones that I've just touched on a bit earlier. Policy and administration. This is specifically on strengthening policy and administration through consolidated forest protection and climate policy. So as we speak, through the support of GGGI, we've developed a carbon trading issues paper that will pave the way towards a carbon trading policy, but also setting up an institutional mechanism or structure in place to consolidate forest protection. And 2, on carbon markets, fostering carbon markets to generate revenue from our intact forest. 3, data management, build data management and reporting capability. And 4, financing vehicle. All these next steps are recommendations that was developed or was captured in the LEDs document, and it's something that the country is currently moving forward to ensure that they are put in place. And as a way of acknowledgement, I would like to specifically thank the Pacific NDC Hub and also Triple GI for the technical support and resources that we've used to develop our policy. We've just endorsed, our cabinet has just endorsed a policy 3 weeks ago, and we will launch this LEDs document together with our national climate change policy on the 2nd of November, which is next week. Once again, Benjamin and colleagues, thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you so much, Henry, for that great presentation, short and sweet. Thank you. So our next presenter would be Mr. Amit Singh from the Pacific community. Mr. Amit is the project development specialist of the Pacific NDC Hub and based at the SPC. He will be talking about the SPC and NDC counter request and how it contributes to low emissions development in the Pacific. Over to you, Mr. Amit.
Thank you. Okay, so Bula all, Amit Singh from NDC Hub. I'll be presenting on the project we recently implemented in Kiribati, which was the strengthening and expanding of standards and labeling program for appliance in Kiribati. So as part of phase 3 of the Pacific NDC Hub project cycle, we received this request from Kiribati on MAPSL and Pulse program, to provide them support with Pulse program that was originally rolled out in the region, and to help them implement their energy bill and the Energy Act moving forward. Before I start with the project itself, I just want to give a quick overview of SPC. So SPC, if you see in the slide, works in the 27 member countries and works across all of the SDGs. We provide support to the member countries through 8 technical divisions here at SPC. Next slide, please. Okay, a quick overview of phase 3 country request that we are implementing. So we have 2 country requests in PNG, looking at PNG's effective framework for land use governance, and the other one is looking at climate smart coffee policy framework. Then we have 2 country requests in Kiribati. One is the Pulse, which we have just completed, and the second one is on capacity building in the assessment and design and the construction of low energy carbon building, which we'll be implementing soon. Apart from these 4, we have country request in FSM, which we completed. We have 2 country requests, one in Palau and one in Niue, associated with review and update of NDCs, which we are implementing right now. And the last country request is in Marshall Islands, which is the coherence review of the national energy policy. Next slide, please. So coming back to the country request of Kiribati that I'll be presenting on in this session. Okay, so Kiribati had recently submitted in 2022 its revised NDC 20CCC, and the revised NDC. This country request is linked to the revised NDC in terms of allowing Kiribati to put in legislations and regulations in place so that they are able to achieve their international commitments, which is part of the NDCs, but also to help contribute to sustainable development and also energy conservation on the island. Next slide, please. A quick overview of how this country request has been received and implemented. So, as part of the phase 3 country request, we did a call for proposal. Countries, they submit their call for proposal to NDC Hub, and after various evaluation, we agree on to implementing the country request and get back to the country saying that which agency will implement the country request. In this case, it was SPC, and we implemented this country request with our technical divisions, energy plus the PICRI center based in Tonga. Next slide. So some of the highlights of the project. So as indicated earlier on, this project this project was requested from Kiribati in order to support implementation of the energy bill after the energy bill was adopted in the parliament, and also provide the necessary institutional environment, institutional and legislative environment for administering and implementation of the MAPSL energy bill moving forward. And so what we did as part of this support was to provide the country in terms of the energy department, but also the customs and the private sector on the commitments that we under the MEPSL program. Also establish the enabling environment for MEPSL. So, this included various online database, but also operating procedures and other documents that were necessary, for example, MOUs that were necessary to implement the MEPSL in the country. Support provided included manuals and guides, and also registrations to specific appliance database, which is housed by the Energy Division at SPC. Development of various operating procedures or SOPs for both customs, energy officials, and also for private sector. Also, we provided support as through PICRI on development of MOUs on letters of authorization as required by the MEPSL regulation. And this was between the private sector and the Energy Division, but also the importers. And one of the last task or the support that was provided was the review of the MEPSL regulation that was as part of the Energy Act. It was reviewed and this was reviewed and submitted to the country. And so, overall, if you look at the project, this project rightly links with the NDC of the country, but also various other NDC planning documents that the country has produced over the years. I think this is the last slide for my presentation. Thank you very much. Naka.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Ahmed, for that great presentation and the lessons learned on the work SPC is doing in the various countries that you presented. We'll keep moving with our next speaker. So I can have the pleasure to introduce Ms. Wanda Wazoa-Chan from the Secretariat of the Pacific Regional Environmental Programs, PREP, based in Samoa. Wanda is the NDC Hub Technical Advisor at PREP based in Samoa. She will be presenting on the NDC work that PREP is supporting the countries that contribute to emissions development in the Pacific. So over to you, Wanda. Thank you.
Talofa from Samoa and talofa from SPREP. Thank you very much, Jesse, for that informative and comprehensive introduction. So because of time constraints, let me get straight into the presentation from SPREP NDC Hub here in Apia. So it's nice to hear from the other speakers. Nice to see you again, DGS, Len, Henry, and of course my colleague Amit. Similar to what SPC is doing, there was a call that went out to countries and therefore they've given in or submitted their NDC request to the NDC Hub. And so SPC is working with the countries that Amit has listed out. These are the 3 countries that our team here at SPREP is working with. So we're currently in the process of implementing 2 requests from Nauru, 2 requests from Samoa, and of course the 1 request from Tuvalu. Next slide, please. So because of the 5 requests that we're working on for the sake of this presentation, I wanted to focus on the work that we are currently doing with Samoa. As you could see from the previous slide that Shanila has just lost, while she's trying to get back the presentation, the 2 requests we're doing with Samoa, the first one is where we're looking at, or Samoa's wanting to look at ways whereby the tourism sector can reduce energy consumption, which in turn, hopefully, will also achieve greenhouse gas reductions from the tourism sector. And with the airports and countries opening up their ports for traveling again, it's very timely that this request has come in from Samoa. So part of the request will be having the consultant carry out a survey in all the accommodation providers, looking at maybe the top 5 electrical appliances and then also providing energy audit trainings for both the big islands of Upolu and Savaii. The second request that we are working with Samoa on is the agroforestry program. Part of Samoa's NDC is where they want to increase the coverage, their forestry coverage. So the aim is to work through the different schools around the two islands and have the students take part in tree planting activities. So not only would this enhance the awareness of the children, but having them do these hands-on activities will go a long way in them being interested in climate change and what they can do to reduce the greenhouse gas emissions for Samoa. Next one. Oh, and I think that was the last slide. All right, thank you very much. Any questions, you're more than welcome to email. And before I sign off, praying for everyone in Vanuatu DG Eslen as Cyclone Lola heads your way. Please stay safe. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Fanda, for the short but great presentation, and we appreciate making us a favor by keeping to time. And also thank you for keeping us in your prayers on this cyclone that is approaching us. Hope it goes away. I think we might allow for one or two questions from the floor. I see one being asked. Maybe for the benefit of everyone, I'll just read out and then Amit can answer. It's full, Amit. I have missed it, but was wondering if we're having any early results on impacts of the projects you have rolled out. I am interested in any immediate impacts of SPCs2 programs in PNG. But just before Amit, you respond, just kindly encouraging everyone to use the chat box for your questions as well, and some of which, if we don't have time to respond to, the presenters will get to you directly on that. And also, just letting you know, there's a link on the chat box. If you can access that link and complete a short survey about our session today. So yeah, thank you. And over to you, Amit, for the response to the question.
Thank you, Jesse. Okay, just quickly to answer the question, I think I have given a short answer in the chat, but I'll say that again. For the country request in PNG, so these two country requests are a part of phase 3, and will be starting with the implementation of these two country requests very soon, most probably by mid of November, up until April next year. So that's for the upcoming country requests in PNG for the phase 3. But in terms of some of the results from previous country requests, I would like to share insights from the two country requests from phase 2. One of these was in Nauru, so Nauru had asked us to look at the water and sanitation master plan they had developed earlier, and to see if it was relevant, let's say last year, in terms of the infrastructure proposed, but also the institutional and enabling environment that was part of the master plan. So we did this review of the water and sanitation master plan and submitted back into Nauru, saying that there were certain things that were relevant and there were certain things that need to be updated since its development. And so this was taken up after submission to Nauru. This was taken up by IDB, and then it was rolled out into a big infrastructure project supported by IDB in the country. So that's one. The second one I'd like to highlight on the country request we delivered in FSM. So the request came from the President's Office, where the climate change division is, that the country request should be around the provision of solar icon units to NGOs in the country. So we started developing the project, and we concluded that we could provide the solar icon units to NGOs who are based in Pohnpei for the ease of the project. So we provided 17 solar icon units to 7 NGOs of varying size. and you know, this was well received, and the NGOs included the women's group, the food society organization, the school library, and so on and so forth. And you know, one of the things that came out of this project was the fact that the NGOs were really happy in the fact that this was one of the project that they said provided direct support to them, and provision of solar aircon units, but also because this were smart aircon units, they were able to also monitor their energy usage of the aircon units, and given these were solar aircon units, they were able to use save on the energy cost associated with energy consumption for air conditioning, but it also provided them with the opportunity to relook at other ways that they could, request for such support through mechanisms like NDC Hub from other development partners. So I think these are the two highlights, or let's say outcomes or learning I would like to share for this question, Vinaka.
Vinaka, Amit, for the presentation. There's a quick question raised here. What is the progress with EV in the transport sector? And the question is for Vanuatu. Maybe DJ, you can respond to that very quickly. And then before we get a wrap up our concluding remarks from Katarina. DJ Eslin, you want to take this one, or? I think you're being muted, we can't hear.
In Vanuatu, with the progress of EV in the transport sector, so we have a project funded. We have project from with the CHEF funding to address some of the issues related to EV. But internally, right now we started by having a policy launch on fuel standardization of vehicle and fuel, but specifically on the EV, we hope that our CHEF funding project will help us to draw the way on how we address the
Yep. Thank you so much, TG Eslin, for that great answer. I think there's some questions on the chat box, but we will not be able to take it because of time. I think the panelists should respond directly to them, and also the contacts have been available. You can email directly to get some responses. I think we're running out of time, so we will now get the final speaker for this session. I would like to hand over to Mrs. Katarina Singalakas, Managing Director and Head of Programs for the Pacific at the GGI, to close our fruitful discussion today. So Katarina oversees Pacific operations in 14 countries, as well as regional programs, including the Pacific NDC Hub and the Climate Finance Access Network, and engages with various international, regional, and national partners to drive green growth and mobilize finance for climate action and sustainable development in the region. Thank you. Over to you, Katarina.
Thank you very much, Jesse. Thank you for the introduction, and thank you to all of the panelists today. And it looks like there's quite a few interesting questions in the chat. So I'd like to say again, please feel free to put questions in the chat, and I'm sure the panelists will try and answer in the next, we've still got 2 minutes. So, and my closing remarks will be 2 minutes. So I'd like to say, well, what have we looked at today is just been such an interesting look at the work on low emission development strategies and the NDCs that is happening in the region. We started, of course, looking at, why are LEDs so important? It's because they give us that policy structure for the long-term transformation to zero emission economies, and helps the whole world plan out where we need to be by 2050. And in the case of the Pacific, is quite a very useful tool to also look at integrating adaptation goals onto that pathway, so we can create win-win situations and apply technologies that can bring us both adaptation and resilience and mitigation outcomes. We also have seen in all the presentations how important those policy documents need to be country driven, whether it's a LEDS or an NDC. And I think that's come through in the presentations that we've seen today. We saw from Vanuatu that their own pathway for reducing emissions demonstrates the commitment which all countries must make. Vanuatu and other countries have put in place a quantitative analysis. And in the case of Vanuatu, there is a very strong adaptation component, and that's very important for the Pacific. And I think we've had a question about how and what does that mean to integrate adaptation into the LEDS. That's an innovation for the Pacific region, and hasn't been done in many places around the world. So I think that is something where the Pacific is ahead. We also heard from Solomon Islands on their very comprehensive sector coverage and clear next steps. I think to implement a LEDS, because it's such a long-term endeavor, those next steps and a phase-by-phase approach is very important. And I think it's something we've seen being integrated into LEDS and into NDCs, to have a plan of next steps, an action plan, and often 5-year phasings of actions, or short, medium, and long term. So in the Solomon Islands, it's very interesting to see the look at the carbon markets, also the link to forestry, and of course, climate policy, and also bringing in the importance of good data, and of course, mobilizing finance to implement LEDS and NDCs. I think it's all been very encouraging for us all to see also all the activities that are happening through the NDC hub, responding to country requests, all of which are aimed at implementing NDCs. It's particularly good to see a focus on energy efficiency on a couple of projects, which can provide gains, reducing costs to businesses and government while still cutting emissions. And so with those few words, I would like to just end by thanking the partners, our partners at the NDC Hub, SPREP, SBC, and GIZ, and also all our development partners and donors, New Zealand, MFAT, the UK, DFAT, AFD, and the German government for their support to NDC's LEDS and climate finance. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Katerina, for the concluding remarks. That basically brings us to the close of today's session. I'd like to thank all the panelists, speakers, and the participants online for this event. And I wish you all a great day. Thank you.